Hello and welcome to Granny's GodPod number 68. One thing leads to another. Why did the Translation Committee of the King James Version advise us in their 1611 preface to use several translations of the Bible? I keep seeing an annoying advert on YouTube, annoying because it keeps cropping up, where a young woman asks, "Which version of the Bible do you use? There's only one version, right?" Wrong. I decided to look at the history of Bible versions, focusing mainly on the OT, the Old Testament. The problem of establishing the correct Hebrew and Aramaic text of the Old Testament is very different from establishing the correct New Testament, for which we have a huge number of Greek manuscripts, many of which were copies taken within 2 to 3 centuries of the originals. For the Old Testament, only late manuscripts survive, based on texts established many centuries after the books were originally written. Hebrew texts began to be translated into Greek in Alexandria from about 280 to 130 BC. And due to the more than 70 scribes producing this version, it is known as the Septuagint, which is the basis of the Old Testament in the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Septuagint was originally used by Hellenized Jews influenced by Greek culture, whose knowledge of Greek was better than Hebrew. And it then came to be used by Gentile converts to Christianity and the early church, for which Greek was the common language. Other texts include the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Syrian text known as the Peshitta, meaning simple, which became the official translation used by the Syriac Church in the 5th century, and the Latin Vulgate, which was translated directly from the Hebrew, which was formerly the official Bible of the Roman Catholic Church. There is also the Jewish Masoretic text, produced by Jewish textual scholars, the Masoretes, in the 9th century, which is the basis for the Protestant Bible. The Masoretes added the vowel signs to better enable reading what was originally a consonantal text. There are about 6,000 differences between the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Masoretic Jewish one, though most are minor name spellings and none affect Protestant doctrine. The Old Testament is based primarily upon the 24 books of the Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, a collection of ancient religious Hebrew and occasionally Aramaic texts written by the Israelites. Christians traditionally divide the Old Testament into 4 sections. The first 5 books, or Pentateuch, correspond to the Jewish Torah. The history books describe what happened to the Israelites from their conquest of Canaan to their defeat and exile in Babylon. Then there is a section of poetic and wisdom books, and lastly are the books of the biblical prophets. The Protestant canon has 39 books, the Catholic 46 books, and the Eastern Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox up to 49 books. Some of these differences reflect the splitting of texts, such as Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, and Minor Prophets, or the omission of the apocryphal, non-canonical, or deuterocanonical, second canon, texts that appear in the Septuagint and the Vulgate, but are not included in the Masoretic text, even though they are Jewish in origin. Part of the Jewish tradition says that some of the oldest Hebrew manuscripts were edited by scribes, which leads to an allegation of flawed texts, although this doesn't add credibility to the Septuagint either, because these changes are attributed to biblical writers like Ezra and Nehemiah and scribes who were members of the Great Synagogue, where the canon was established, allegedly, in 450 BC. New Testament writers, especially Paul, use the Septuagint when quoting the Old Testament, which makes sense since they were often speaking to a Greek audience, and most Jews spoke Greek, not Hebrew. Some, though, think the Hebrew manuscript on which the Masoretic text was based tried to discredit Christianity. For example, Hebrew 10 quotes Psalm 40 in the Septuagint. "Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me." Whereas the Masoretic text has Psalm 40 saying, "Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but my ears you have opened." "A body you prepared for me" and "my ears you have opened" are completely different, and the Masoretic text omits this prophecy about the incarnation clearly intended by the author of Hebrews. The Dead Sea Scrolls included hundreds of copies of Old Testament books, except for Esther, and they predate the 9th century Masoretic text by a millennium to the 2nd century. These suggest that there were multiple ancient manuscripts, and the ones on which the Septuagint was based are different to the ones used for the Masoretic text. Jewish tradition has always held the Masoretic text as authoritative. William Tyndale made the first English version of the scriptures by direct translation from the original Hebrew and Greek, which was bitterly opposed and led to his execution. Yet this became the foundation of other English versions: the Coverdale in 1535, the Great Bible in 1539, the Geneva Bible in 1560, and the Bishop's Bible of 1568. In 1582, a translation of the New Testament made from the Latin Vulgate was published in Reims. The translators of the King James Version used all of these, and while initially it had to compete with the Geneva Bible, it eventually became the authorized version for all English-speaking people. Nonetheless, the development of biblical studies and the discovery of many manuscripts more ancient made revision necessary, and this was undertaken by the authority of the Church of England in 1870. The English Standard Version was published between 1881 and 1885, and the American Standard Version in 1901. In 1946, the Revised Standard Version was produced to take the best of modern scholarship and the King James Version. Well, I've been interested in family history for ages, but I didn't realise this would be like a genealogy of the Bible itself. People naturally don't like change, and all versions seem to court controversy. I have heard the NIV called the nearly inspired version and the not inspired version, but then they say you can't please all of the people all of the time. Which version do you like, and why, I wonder? God bless. Till next time.